Learn how to build SQL databases for fun and profit. That's today on CodeLab. Roll film.
Get ready to go. Get ready to go. Get ready to go.
Hey, I'm Mark Lassoff. Welcome to CodeLab, the show where you learn a new coding technique each and every episode. Really glad you're here. We've got a really interesting show today. We're going to be talking about SQL databases, and we're actually going to create our own SQL database step by step using a tool called PHPMyAdmin. I'm going to show you how to set up the database, set up the individual tables and fields, and create and retrieve records. That's all today on CodeLab. Stay tuned. The first thing we're going to need to do is get our software together. We're going to need an Apache server that interprets PHP and also has the MySql Database installed. You can actually download that as a single package and run it on your desktop, and that's what I recommend. If you have a Windows machine, you can search Google for WAMP, Windows, Apache, MySQL, and PHP, and it should show you the SourceForge download. Just go to SourceForge, download and install the package. They make a similar package for Mac called MAMP, Macintosh, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. Just download MAMP for Windows. You don't need the professional version. Install that, and you'll be ready to go. Once you've got WAMP or MAMP, if you're on a Mac, installed, you'll see it here in your tray, this W. It looks a little different on the Mac, but same idea. And here you can see all the different controls for the WAMP package. Now remember, the WAMP package is actually running a server on your local computer. So here is the home page of that server, or what's commonly called localhost, and it gives us information about the server configuration, like the Apache version and the software and the version of PHP that's installed, and then all the different extensions that are installed. You can see here, for example, MySql, which stands for MySQL Improved, along with SQLite, another database here. You can see down here there are three tools: PHP Info, PHPMyAdmin, and the ability to add a virtual host. So if we click PHP Info, this tool shows you all of the configuration settings for PHP. There is a whole lot of them. Going back to localhost by clicking the back button, we also have PHPMyAdmin. This is a tool we'll be spending some time in. This is where we'll actually create and configure our MySQL database. We'll set that up in a minute. Let's go back to our localhost configuration page. There's also here information, if we go down and click on the tray icon again, a direct link to the MySQL database, including a MySQL console that works just like a command line, except you're in the MySQL program. So we can enter MySQL commands right here on the console. We also have the MySQL log, the MySQL documentation, which you may want to take a look at, individual settings for MySQL, version information, etc. So this is worth taking a look at. You also have the same settings for a database here that we're not going to use, Maria Database. The settings for PHP programming, the settings for Apache, and then something called the www directory. Let's click that. So the www directory opened this directory right here, and this is actually the live folder that the server looks in to find PHP files that it will then process and output as part of the localhost server. So we could write PHP and put it right in here. In fact, this index.php file is what's being processed and what we're looking at right here. It's our WAMP server homepage. We would probably overwrite this if we were actually to write our own PHP software. So from my WAMP server home screen, I'm going to go ahead and click PHPMyAdmin. And since I selected the defaults, the username is root and there is no password, Going to make sure we're using the MySql database, since the PHPMyAdmin tool lets you administrate both MySql and the Maria type of databases. So now we're in the PHPMyAdmin interface. Notice again here you can switch between MySql and MariaDB. And there's actually already some databases in here that are used mostly behind the scenes. We're not going to worry about these. But let's take a moment and look at the interface. The tabs up here are the main way you'll navigate through the application. Now, as you're first using this, you probably won't use all of these, but let's go through a few that are really important. There's the Databases tab, which shows the databases that are already inside the system and allows you to create a new database. Let's create a database here called Music. I'll simply set the name of the database. And here we could set different types of character sets. We're going to leave it in the default since we're not in any of these places. We don't need the localization. We're just going to use the standard UTF-8 default. And I'm going to click Create. And you'll notice that the music database has been created here on the left-hand side. You can see it along with the other system databases. And because it's selected, we're actually inside that database now, which is empty. Let's take a step back out of the database. So now no database is selected. We have our Databases tab. We then have our SQL tab. Here in the SQL tab, we could actually write SQL commands like this, but we don't have any tables or databases, so the commands won't work. We'll demonstrate that again once we have our music database populated. We have a Status tab. Information about the user accounts. Right now we're using the root account. Again, not a good practice. Security-wise, we'd want to have a less privileged account that was being used by our application. The option to export a database as a .sql file. Essentially, this would export all of the commands needed to remake and repopulate the database. The database could also be exported in several other formats like CSV, which stands for comma-separated value, JSON, which can be useful if you're a JavaScript program, PHP array, etc. So this can be a very useful tool. You can also import the database. This also can be useful if you're moving the database over from a different server. You have your settings, and then some more advanced options for database replication, variables, character sets, database engines, and plugins. Let's go back to our initial databases section and let's enter our music database. So a database is a set of tables, and tables hold individual records which held data in individual fields. So the number of columns are the number of fields we would want in a table. So let's create a simple table called songs. And I think 4 columns is good. We could always change this number later, so it's not that big of a deal. Now, quite typically, I would create my database on paper before entering the PHPMyAdmin software. Good database design is important, and if you design your database poorly, it is something that will affect you down the road, and you never want to have to redesign your database midstream. Every table in your database should have what's called a primary key. This is a field that's guaranteed to be unique in every record. I like to create an artificial primary key with a field that numbers itself. So I'm simply going to call this song number. It's going to be an integer. We'll go over these types in a minute. It's going to be 11 characters long. It cannot be null. And it's going to auto increment. meaning that it's going to increment each time we put a new record in there. So that's going to be our primary key field. We actually can mark this as a primary key. Right here, it says primary. Next would be our song name. Pretty simple table. Now, type is not going to be an integer. You can see we've got a lot of different types here. They're broken into some different categories. Integer for an integer number. And it even gives you a little pop-up there that tells you it's a 4-byte integer. Varchar, which is variable length between 0 and 65,000 characters. Text, which is simply text. Varchar and text are a little bit different from each other. In text, each field will occupy the length based on the number of characters. Varchar is variable length. We then have date fields. And then we get into the kind of more specific types of database fields. Tiny integers, which is between 128.7 and negative 128. A small int, negative 32,768 to positive 32,767. A medium int, an integer, and a big int. Now, you may be wondering why you have all these different types, and the reason is to make the database efficient. A database that is efficient allows it to be indexed more quickly and information to be accessed more quickly. We also have the traditional decimal numbers, floating point numbers, double precision floating point numbers, real numbers, which is a synonym for double, single bit, which is 1 or 0, Boolean, which is also 1 or 0. And then we have some date types, date time, timestamp, etc. Several types of strings, some spatial types of data. So there's a lot of different types of data that can be stored here. Let's just go with the old varchar. And let's say we want to limit our song name to 256 characters. I can't think of a song that's longer than that. I think we'll leave the rest of these options alone. Let's go with album name. Again, this is going to be a varchar with 256 characters. And let's do a song rating. And we'll rate our songs between 1 and 10. And this can also be an integer. We could choose a specific type of integer, but I'm just going to choose the general int here. Length is going to be 2, because at most that's going to be 2 characters. All right, we're not going to put any comments in the table, so now we can preview the SQL that's actually going to be used to create the table. And you can see the SQL right here. It uses the create table command. The table is called music. Excuse me, the database is called music. The table is called songs. You notice it's music.songs. We have our song number, which is int 11, auto increment. The song name, which is a varchar, 256 characters. Album name, varchar 256. And a rating, which is an int 2. Now notice that all of these say not null except for our song number. I actually got that backwards. That's why I preview the SQL. We actually want this to be not null because it's our primary key. We want to make sure we have to have a value in here. And actually, we're going to require all the fields to not be null, so we'll leave that blank. If we preview the SQL again, create table, music as a database, .songs, song number int 11, not null, auto increment. Perfect. The rest of these look good, so I'm going to close the preview. And when I click save, it's actually going to run that SQL command that we just previewed. And you can see our database our database music now has a table songs that has 4 fields: the song number, which is our primary key, the song name, the album name, and the rating. There is no data in here yet because we simply haven't created any. So let's go ahead and enter some data. You'll notice that we are now looking at the structure of our table songs. And if we go to insert, it now gives us fields where we can insert data. So we're actually going to leave the song number alone because that's auto increment. And let's type our first song name, Pictures of You. The album name is Disintegration, and that's by The Cure, and the rating is 10. Let's do a second song here, and the song name is Only the Young. Album name is Journey's Greatest Hits, and we'll give that a rating of 9. Now notice here we can insert this as a new row and then go back to the previous page or insert another new row. Let's go ahead and preview the SQL. This is a great way, by the way, to become familiar with the SQL language and structure, is to start issuing your SQL commands here in PHPMyAdmin and look at the SQL that's written. So here you see insert into songs, then you have the name of the fields, song number, song name, album name, and rating. The values, null, because that's our auto increment field, picture of you, disintegration, 10, and then the second record, Only the Young, Journey's Greatest Hits, and 9. All right, so let's go ahead and close the preview, and let's hit go. And it's going to go back to the SQL field, and it's going to show you exactly what it just did. And you can see here 2 rows inserted into our songs table inside our music database. If we go ahead and look here now at browse, you can see the records here inside of the table. I hope you're enjoying our project so far as we build our database using the MySql Database and the PHPMyAdmin tool. Hey, if you are enjoying the video, I just wanted to remind you to go ahead and click like and subscribe to our channel. Hit that little bell so you're alerted for each and every new episode. Thanks again. Let's get back to the action today on CodeLab. Now, you might have noticed there's a glaring omission from the structure of our database. We haven't put the name of the artist inside of our songs table. That's necessary information. Luckily, we can easily go back and change the structure of our table right here. Notice the option to add a number of columns after a specific column. So after the song name, I think that's the right place, and we're going to add 1 column. So let's click go. And now, of course, we've got to describe that column just as we did before. So this is going to be the artist. It'll be a varchar. And let's go with 128 characters, trying to remain efficient. We obviously want to go ahead and leave the null setting alone, and we don't want this to auto-increment. So nothing else to set here. We can preview the SQL. This uses the alter table statement. Adds artist, a varchar 128, not null, after song name. Looks good. Let's save. And if we go again and look at the structure of our table, we have song name. But we do have to alter the 2 records that we have in here in order to add the artist information. So I'm going to click edit, and artist for Pictures of You is The Cure. And that information is now saved in the database, as you can see here in the table preview. Let's add the artist for Only the Young by clicking edit. Of course, the artist is Journey. You're learning about my musical taste here as well as learning about the PHPMyAdmin application. Okay, so we've got our 2 pieces of information in here. Notice that the auto increment worked fine. We have 1 and 2. We have the song name, the artist, album name, and the rating. So if we wanted to, we could issue a SQL command right in here to select all of the records from our songs table. So this command right here, select star, which means all from song. And we could run this and see the result by clicking go. And there it's showing us the results here. It's structuring it for us, but we're certainly seeing all the information. Let's add a couple more pieces of information to our database so we can start playing with some sorts. So to enter more data in our table, I'm going to go up here to insert. And let's insert our first song. That'll be Fly Like an Eagle. And that is by the Steve Miller Band. Album name is also Fly Like an Eagle. And I'll give that an 8. All right, so let's do the last song I'm going to put in the database for right now. And the song name is Kiri. The artist is Mr. Mister. The album name is Welcome to the Real World. And I'll give this a rating of 10. When I click go, we'll see the SQL that's been executed. And if we click browse, we will see now all the songs in our database. Now, you'll notice that these are in the order of the primary key, 1, 2, 3, and 4. If I want to order them some other way, I can do that in a SQL statement. So select star from songs. Remember, that gives us all of our songs. And we're going to choose order by. And now we can choose a field to order by. Let's order by the artist. So this is going to now show all of our records in order by the artist. And now you can see we're in alphabetical order by artist. We still have our primary keys, but we're not in order by primary key. We're in order by artist. And again, here I'm issuing SQL commands directly in the console and seeing the result. Let's try one more. So here we've got select star from songs, where. So now we're doing what's called a where clause, where, and we're going to say rating equals 10. Let's run that. So this is called a filter because we're not displaying all of the records. We are filtering by some criteria, in this case, rating equals 10, and we're just displaying the records that meet that criteria. A mistake that new developers sometimes make is thinking that this PHPMyAdmin software is actually the database. What PHPMyAdmin is doing is giving us a view into the database. You can see the server up here, MySQL server on port 3308. And we're in the database music and the table songs. This hierarchy is showing you exactly where we're at. But this is simply a view into that database, not the database itself. In fact, we could go to our tray tool here for WAMP, go to the MySQL option, and choose the MySQL console. This console or command line view will give us another view into the exact same database. So you can see the MySQL prompt, and if I choose the command show databases and terminate with a semicolon, you can see we've got the same databases here that are listed on the left-hand side of PHPMyAdmin, because this is a different view into the same server. In fact, we can select the music database, and we can show the tables in that database, and even issue SQL commands. So let's issue our select command. Select all from songs. And there's the result. You can see our 4 records with our primary key, the song name, the artist, the album name, and the rating. Let's revisit a command we issued before inside of PHPMyAdmin. So we're going to have to alter this command because we've changed the structure of the table since we issued it. So after song name, we now have a field called artist. So I'm going to add that into the SQL command. And let's go ahead and add the song Born in the USA. The reason it's important to know how to use the command line is because you'll need to issue your commands within PHP or whatever programming language you're using SQL like you use it in the command line. So there we've got Bruce Springsteen. I believe the album is also called Born in the USA. And I think that gets a 10 rating. How can it not? Let's erase the second insertion here and add our semicolon as the terminating character. Unknown column, Bruce Springsteen in the field list. Let's take a look here. We've got our artist, Born in the USA. Let's change these to straight quotes like the rest of them. I think that was my error. And there we go. So you can see query OK, 1 row affected. So now if we issue our select star from songs, you can see Born in the USA is added along with our primary key, our artist, our album name, and the rating. Because this is a view into the same database, if we browse the database here, it has been added. And we can manipulate it here with edits if we wanted to, or changes. But PHPMyAdmin is a great tool to create and manipulate databases during development. Hey, thanks for watching this episode of CodeLab. My name is Mark Lassoff. Really glad you could join us today. I do hope you'll tune in for future episodes of CodeLab from Framework Television. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.